The grocery store on Maple Street always smelled faintly of coffee and freshly baked bread. Its fluorescent lights buzzed softly, reflecting off tidy rows of cereal boxes, soup cans, and neatly stacked loaves of bread. Outside, snow flurries danced in the cold wind, the kind that bit through coats and scarves, the kind that made people hurry home. Inside, however, the line at checkout 3 was moving slowly. The cashier, a young man in a red vest named Malcolm, smiled patiently as he scanned each item, not with the robotic rhythm of a tired worker, but with the quiet energy of someone who cared. His name tag gleamed against the red of his vest, and his easy smile had become familiar to many of the store's regulars. An old woman shuffled to the front of the line. Her name was Edith Clark, though few people knew it. Most just saw the worn-out coat with fraying sleeves, the tired eyes, the careful way she counted each dollar as if it might slip away if she didn't hold it tight. The others in line looked at her the way city people often do, a mixture of pity and impatience. She placed a loaf of bread and a small bottle of milk on the counter. "That'll be $2.49, Malcolm said cheerfully. Edith's fingers trembled slightly as she opened her old leather wallet. Inside were a few coins, a folded bus pass, and a single dollar bill. She frowned, double-checked the price display, and whispered almost to herself, "It was $2 last week." Malcolm noticed her hesitation. He could tell she was calculating in her head, deciding which item to put back. The people behind her shifted uncomfortably, eager to move along. A man in a navy coat sighed audibly. Edith looked up at Malcolm and offered a weak smile. "Just the bread, then. I'll leave the milk." Malcolm hesitated only for a second. Then, before she could change her mind, he scanned both items again and said quietly, "Don't worry, ma'am. It's all covered." Edith blinked. No, I can't let you." But Malcolm had already slipped a dollar bill from his own pocket and pressed it discreetly against the register. "Just a store promotion," he lied kindly, "senior discount. Happens every now and then." Her eyes softened, the way winter softens at the first sign of spring. She looked at him, really looked, as if trying to memorize the shape of his face. "Thank you," she whispered. "No problem, ma'am," he said, still smiling. "You stay warm out there." She left the store slowly, her bread and milk tucked carefully into a reusable canvas bag that had once been bright but was now faded and thin. The cold air greeted her, and for the first time in a while, she didn't feel entirely invisible. When the door closed behind her, Malcolm turned back to his register. The next customer, a middle-aged woman with a fur-trimmed coat, placed her groceries on the belt. "That was very nice of you," she said, her tone a blend of admiration and surprise. "Not many people would bother." Malcolm shrugged. "Everyone deserves a little kindness. You never know what someone's going through." The woman nodded slowly, then reached into her purse and handed him a $10 bill. "Put this toward the next few people who need it." Malcolm blinked. "Oh, are you sure?" "Completely," she said, smiling. "You started something good. Keep it going." By the time her groceries were bagged, the story of the senior discount had started to spread. A man in the next line had seen what happened and whispered it to his wife. A teenager scrolling through his phone looked up, smiled, and added, "That's actually really cool." The store, for a few minutes, seemed to hum with something softer than its usual rhythm, something like warmth. Edith lived alone in a small apartment on Willow Street, 2 blocks from the store. The heater worked when it wanted to, and the windows rattled when the wind blew hard. Her husband, Harold, had passed 10 years ago, and her only daughter lived 3 states away. They spoke on the phone occasionally, but time and pride had built invisible walls between them. Her days followed quiet routines, feeding the stray cat that visited her doorstep, knitting scarves for the shelter, and watching the world go by through her window. But that night, as she poured herself a cup of tea and sliced the bread she'd bought, she thought about the young man at the store. His smile, his kindness. It wasn't the money, it was the gesture. The acknowledgement. The simple reminder that she still mattered. She took a small piece of stationery from her drawer and began to write. Dear young man at the grocery store. You may not remember me, but I will remember you. Thank you for your kindness today. It meant more than you know. Edith Clark. She folded the note carefully and decided she'd deliver it tomorrow. The next morning, Malcolm arrived early, as usual. He was saving money for college, community college now, maybe university later. His mother worked double shifts at the hospital, and he tried to help with rent when he could. As he wiped down his register, he noticed a small envelope placed under the counter, with his name written in neat cursive. Inside was the note. He read it twice, smiling softly. Then he tucked it into his wallet. He didn't need thanks, but somehow the words made the air around him feel lighter. Later that day, Malcolm's manager, Mr. Jenkins, called him into the office. I heard about yesterday, the manager said, folding his arms. You can't just pay for customers out of your own pocket, son. Company policy. Malcolm nodded. I understand. It won't happen again. Jenkins studied him for a moment, then sighed. I'm not angry. Just, be careful. The world doesn't always reward kindness. Malcolm smiled faintly. Maybe it doesn't have to. Over the next week, small things began to happen around Maple Street Grocery. A teenager helped an older man load bags into his car. A mother told her child to let someone else go first in line. And one quiet afternoon, Mr. Jenkins himself handed a cup of coffee to a shivering delivery driver and said, no charge. No one talked about it much, but everyone felt it, the shift, the quiet chain reaction that one act of kindness had started. 2 weeks later, Edith returned to the store. Her coat looked the same, but her step was lighter. Malcolm was at a different register this time, but when she saw him, her face brightened. She approached slowly. I wanted to thank you again, she said softly. That day, you reminded me of my husband. He used to say, kindness is never wasted, even if it goes unnoticed. You noticed. Malcolm smiled. He sounds like a wise man. He was. She hesitated, then added, I baked something for you. She handed him a small tin wrapped in faded floral paper. Inside were oatmeal cookies, slightly uneven, clearly homemade. Malcolm chuckled. Thank you, ma'am. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she interrupted gently. You've got a good heart. Don't let the world harden it. That evening, as Malcolm was leaving, he found Mr. Jenkins waiting by the door. Got a minute? Jenkins asked. Sure. I've been thinking, Jenkins said, rubbing his neck. We've got a new community outreach program starting, collecting donations for senior meal deliveries. I'd like you to lead it. You've got a knack for this kind of thing. Malcolm blinked. Really? Me? Jenkins nodded. You're the reason I even thought of it. For the first time, Malcolm realized his small act had rippled further than he could have imagined. He felt a quiet pride, not loud or boastful, but deep and. As winter melted into early spring, the program grew. Local bakeries donated bread, customers added a few dollars to their bills, and volunteers delivered meals to seniors in the neighborhood. Edith became one of their favorite stops. When Malcolm knocked on her door one Sunday, she opened it with a wide smile. Oh, my. Look at you, she said, seeing his volunteer badge. You've started something wonderful. Actually, he said, you did. They shared tea that afternoon, talking about everything from old movies to dreams for the future. It felt, to both of them, like family, unexpected, genuine, and deeply comforting. A few months later, Malcolm walked by Edith's apartment building on his way to work. He often waved when he saw her at the window. But that morning, her window was empty. The next day, still no sign. By the third, he felt uneasy. He stopped by, knocked on her door, and was met by her neighbor, a kind woman in her 50s. "I'm sorry, dear," she said softly. "Edith passed away 2 nights ago." Peacefully, in her sleep. Malcolm felt something tighten in his chest. The neighbor handed him an envelope. "She left this for you." He opened it slowly. "Dear Malcolm. Don't be sad. You gave me more joy in my last months than I'd felt in years. You reminded me that kindness is alive. Please keep spreading it, not for me, but for everyone who's forgotten what it feels like. With love. Edith." Malcolm stood on the steps for a long time, letter trembling in his hands. Then he looked up at the window, now empty, and whispered, "Thank you." A year later, Maple Street Grocery hosted a small ceremony. On the bulletin board near the entrance, a new sign read, "The Edith Clark Memorial Scholarship. For young community leaders who make a difference through kindness." It was funded by small donations, a few dollars from customers, some from the store, some from a city grant. Malcolm was the first recipient, using it to attend college part-time while still working at the store. The scholarship's motto, printed in gold letters, read, "Kindness is never wasted." Years passed. The grocery store changed owners, but Malcolm stayed for a while, working evenings while studying social work. Eventually, he moved on, volunteering, organizing community programs, helping young people find opportunities just as he once needed. But he always remembered that winter day, the trembling hands that held a dollar bill, the weary smile that turned into gratitude, the loaf of bread that became a symbol. And sometimes, when life felt too heavy, he would take out the note Edith had written him and read it again. "You may not remember me, but I will remember you." He smiled every time. One rainy afternoon, years later, Malcolm, now a social worker at a local community center, was helping distribute food baskets. A teenage volunteer struggled to carry 2 heavy boxes. "Here, let me help," Malcolm said. The boy grinned. "Thanks, Mr. Rivers. You don't have to do everything yourself." Malcolm chuckled. "Just doing my part." As they loaded the boxes into the van, the boy asked, "What made you start all this?" "The food drives, the kindness stuff." Malcolm paused for a moment, watching the rain streak down the window. "A long time ago," he said, "someone taught me that one small act can change everything." The boy nodded thoughtfully. "That's cool." Malcolm smiled. "Yeah. It is." Outside, the rain eased into a light drizzle, and the clouds began to part. A faint beam of sunlight cut through, glinting off the wet pavement, gentle, quiet, and full of promise.